Thank you. It's an honor, a real honor, to be here to lead off a panel much more distinguished than myself. An economy is free in facade only, or capitalist in facade only, if the direction of resources in that economy is made by political elites or collectives rather than by the decisions of consumers and by the decisions of competing entrepreneurs for resources and for customers. A society is free in facade only if capitalism is in facade only. This is a point that's not well enough understood, I believe, in modern society. There are two propositions that are deeply held by political and intellectual elites in the West, by liberals, as we miscall them in the English-speaking world, or increasingly progressives, very ironic term. One of those propositions is that government or collective interference with many personal or non-economic decisions threatens liberty and threatens the civil society. When government interferes with reproductive choices or freedom of the press, that's dangerous. A second proposition is that when government interferes in the economy, that somehow enhances our freedom, or at least doesn't threaten it. I believe that the first of these propositions is profoundly correct. I believe that the second of these propositions is profoundly mistaken. And I have two reasons for that. One is fairly obvious and very well known, at least to people who've studied the works of scholars such as F.A. Hayek and Milton Friedman, and that is it's impossible for the government to control the economy, to have some control over the economy, without having similar, at least potential control over the things we call non-economic. Take a fairly obvious example of paper mills. If governments own all the paper mills, or if they have a significant discretion over the use of paper, how the paper mills operate, then they can deny magazine owners and newspapers an essential input into their operation. A less obvious example might be financing. If governments own all the banks or have significant discretion over the allocation of capital, they can deny an equally important input into those who would start newspapers and need financing to maintain media outlets. The governments can deny that input to organizations and to voices that would criticize the state. That's fairly obvious, and these kinds of examples can be multiplied indefinitely, well beyond the 6 minutes or 60 minutes that I might have up here. I have a second reason for arguing that economic freedom and non-economic freedom are really inseparable and should be considered as one. And I'll give 4 points on this, 4 reasons for this second reason, but they're really all of a piece. The first is that freedom or liberty respects the dignity of the individual. If we regard the individual as being a relevant, freestanding moral agent with dignity in himself or herself, and if we understand that that dignity is offended whenever the state interferes in non-economic decisions such as reproductive choice, if or how to worship, what people can say politically or non-politically, then we should also understand that the dignity of the individual is offended when his or her economic decisions, or things we call economic decisions, are interfered with. When my choice of how to prepare for my retirement is obstructed by the government, when my choice in what kind of consumer goods I can buy or from whom I may buy them is obstructed by the government, then my dignity as an individual is offended no less than my dignity is offended if the government tells me who I may sleep with and what I may do with them peacefully in my bed. The second reason is liberty respects the competence of the individual. That's a related point to the first. If we regard the individual as competent to choose his or her lifestyle, his or her sexual partners, then why don't we regard the individual to be equally competent to make economic choices? I can see no reason for the distinction, but somehow political elites and intellectual elites in the West do find a reason for this distinction, but for the life of me, I can't make out why they do so. The third reason is that liberty understands and is suspicious of people who would play God. We don't trust, for example, the politician or the dictator who restricts the freedom of the press on the grounds that he or she knows the truth better than do editors and reporters and bloggers and readers. We understand that that person is making an excuse to exercise power that he or she should not exercise. Well, for the same reason, we should be suspicious of the person who would play God over our economic lives. The person who is mistake-prone, has limited knowledge, perhaps corrupt and dishonest when regulating non-economic matters, such as speech, such as sexual practices, such as religious beliefs, doesn't somehow become godlike and perfect when regulating economic matters. And so the very reason, the suspicion of people who would play God in non-economic matters should apply also to economic matters. And finally, the belief in freedom is not fearful of the true progress of society. We understand that when people are free to make lifestyle choices, religious choices, artistic choices, society grows and changes in undirected ways, and we celebrate that in the West, as we should. Well, the same is true in the economic sphere. At the end of the day, liberty, I believe, is a whole. It is indivisible. And when you threaten it in one area, you inevitably and invariably put it at risk in another area. Thank you.